Hello, our topic is data visualization. Data visualization is a wonderful way to better understand how astrology works. And it's really wonderful if you write articles or books or you give lectures because it helps you clearly understand the ideas. Then you can explain and communicate them more clearly. So it's a wonderful, wonderful tool. And I'm going to focus on using data visualization in compatibility research. And the reason I'm doing that is because we've recently introduced, like in the past few days, some new compatibility research features. And I want to share that. But data visualization is wonderful for any area of astrology, whether it's natal compatibility or forecasting or just about anything else. So what is data visualization? It can be things like graphs. So here we see a graph. And why are graphs so important for research, for understanding, specifically for the field of astrology, how astrology works? It's very important because this is how research is most often done in a field like astrology. When we think of research, a lot of us think of the old-fashioned paradigm, which is that you have a hypothesis. Like maybe my hypothesis is that people who have sun or moon in an earth sign will marry people who also have sun or moon in an earth sign because it's very compatible. They're likely to stay together, stay married, have children. Maybe that's my idea. I'm just making that up. And then, when we think of research, a lot of us think, well, you have this hypothesis, you collect the data, and you see if it's true. Well, that certainly is an extremely important kind of research, but it's not the main kind of research that I would recommend, or other people who've been trained in research methods would recommend in astrology, because we don't really need to have a strict hypothesis at this point. What's more useful is if you have a large group of people who are married and just see how their suns and moons are related. And then you'll see if what you're guessing or what you think is likely, if if the earth signs get together and get married and the air signs do and the fire signs. But then you can see a lot more. So it helps you understand what patterns, what kinds of configurations are there. So it opens you up to much more than just one narrow little segment. So by having a hypothesis, you're shrinking the world down to this little tiny like crack in the universe. And it's more useful to just explore and see what's going on, because that way you can see if your idea works, and you can also see if some other ideas are happening. And it requires your astrological expertise to go in and look at it and see what's happening. So it's a graph like this. And what this graph is showing is the relationship of a husband's sun to the wife's moon. And this is data collected by the Gauquelins, Michael and Francoise Gauquelin, who you probably know collected huge amounts of data of professional groups like actors and musicians and scientists and athletes. Well, the Gauquelins collected other data as well. And one of the data collections that they made is of married couples that they got from a hospital. So they have the birth record of the husband, the wife, and some of their children. And what I've done is I've taken that data, which is available on a website, and I've downloaded it. It's into the software. In fact, it's ready to be accessed within the Sirius 3.0 software. And it's 20,916 married couples. And the new features that I've added to the software are improved ways of seeing what's going on between the husband and wife. This graph that we're looking at here is the distance of the husband's sun to the wife's moon. And we could do it the other way around. We could do it between Venus and Mars. But just as an example, is it true that husbands and wives tend to have trines and sextiles between, say, their suns and moons or Venus and Mars? What's going on? What attracts people to get married? Well, here it is. Here's the graph. And what this graph is showing us is it goes from 0 to 179. So horizontally. So from left to right, it's the 180 degrees from conjunction to opposition. So what it's showing is on the left side, the graph is a little bit high, right over here on the left, and then it goes down. That means the distance from the husband's sun to the wife's moon is very often a conjunction. And then we go down here and it says 10, 11, 14 degrees. Not very often is it this angular distance. Then it gradually goes up, and the distance of the husband's sun to the wife's moon very often is around 45 degrees, 45 to 50 degrees. Now that's curious. We would have more expected 60 degrees, but it's actually higher at 45 to 50. I don't know why that would be. I don't know. And we'll also talk about whether that's a random fluctuation. I'll talk about that in a minute. But here's my point right now, is we can see what is happening between the husbands and wives and not just limit ourselves to this one little narrow avenue that we're like having tunnel vision and just seeing if our theory is correct. We're seeing the whole distribution. And also interesting, obviously, to do the opposite, the husband's moon to the wife's sun. And with a few clicks, you can bring all of this information up. So this is a way to explore what is in the data and to see it visually and to trigger your imagination and your understanding of astrology. Can you make sense of this? This is the fact. This is what's going on. And this is what we call data visualization, to just see what is happening in the charts. So, as I mentioned, I'm using here the Sirius 3.0 software. It includes this data of the husbands and wives, and I've just improved the data visualization. And what I've done here is I saved the graph. I clicked on the button to save the graph, and then I brought it up in a simple graphics program, the Paint program that comes with Windows, and I just drew a horizontal line through the average score. I just drew that in, and I put red circles around some of these peaks, some of these angular distances that are very high. And what happens with data visualization is to make progress with it and to make discoveries. One of the big things you need is to be a really good astrologer. Can you understand what's happening here? Is it meaningful? One thing we find out right away is it's not true for these almost 21,000 married couples that were born in the early 1900s in France. So for these French married couples, they do not tend to have trines between their suns and moons. I don't have the graph here, but if we ran the opposite of the husband's moon to the wife's sun, we'll see a similar thing, that over here at about 120 degrees, where my cursor is, it's not particularly high. There is a narrow peak here at about 116 degrees. And it's probably just a random fluctuation. You're noticing it's not a gradually increasing value. This is data visualization. We can find out very easily what is going on and if there's anything meaningful happening. Now, the big question when you're looking at this graph is, are these just random fluctuations? Is it really true that the husband's sun to the wife's moon tends to be between 45 and 50 degrees over here or one of these other peaks? or are they just random fluctuations? And there's a wonderful feature in the Sirius software to tell us whether these fluctuations are important or not. And what it is I added this feature that you can tell the software, you just go into the menu items and you tell it to randomly match the husbands and wives. So instead of the actual husband and wife, say Tom is married to Sally, we have Tom married to Jane and Sally married to Bill. We randomly connect the husbands and wives, not to the actual husband and wife, but to somebody else, and then run the same research and see what happens. And what we find out when we do it for this random matching, not actual husbands and wives, but randomly matched husbands and wives, we get this graph. And it has the same kind of range where each degree is ranging from 0.44 to 0.66. If I go back to this one, for the actual husbands and wives, again, about the same, 0.42. It's about the same to 0.66. It's a similar range. This tells us that just by random connection, you'll get these ranges. And to make this clear, what this 0.55, 0.56, 0.58, etc. is there are 180 degrees, angular distances from 0 to 180. So the chance that your sun to your, say, your wife or your husband's moon is going to be somewhere between 0 and 180, and randomly you have, 1 out of 180 people are going to have sun to moon angle 0 to 1 degrees, 1 out of 180, 1 to 2. There's 180 possibilities. So you have, if you have 180 people on average, they'll be distributed across those 180 degrees. So if you 1 out of 180 is about 1/2 of 1%. Well, you don't have to worry about these numbers if numbers scare you, but it's 0.55% is average, and that's the average right down the center there. So what this tells us is that these peaks in the husband-wife data are probably just random, because the random data has the same ups and downs as the actual data. The bottom line is that this is a little bit unsettling. It's not a happy result. We're not finding anything strong between the husband's wife and the husband's sun and the wife's moon. And this random group is sometimes called a control group. You've probably heard that term before. So this random pairing of people we call the control group, and we compare that to the actual group. And also in the software, you can make more than one control group, random pairing. You can also graph the difference between the actual distances and the control group differences. There's so many cool things you can do to explore what's happening. But what I want to do in this video is just share with you that we have data. We have many thousands of charts of famous people. We have this data of married couples and their children, and we can graph it and we can explore it and we can see what's happening. Now let me tell you the good news. After telling you the bad news, that I didn't see anything, and there clearly is nothing very obviously going on between the suns and moons of these married couples. But even though these results are disappointing, 2 points. Number one, we now know that for married couples in France who were born in the early to mid-1900s, there is no easily detected relationship of the distance between the husband's sun and the wife's moon. Maybe there's a relationship, but if it's there, it's not obvious. I couldn't find it. Maybe an astrologer can play with this and look at it and see that there is something going on. But it's certainly not obvious. It's not like there's sextiles or trines or something really obvious going on. This is nice to know. So it's disappointing, but at least we know that. Now, point number 2, and more importantly, there are other things that show up for the married couples. And I'm not going to go into all of that right now, but in going through it and analyzing it, I did find things that are stronger for the married couples, and they make sense according to astrological theory. And these discoveries are made just by looking at the graphs. And I have here no statistics needed. I mean, we are counting how many people there are and things like that, but we're not doing statistical tests. We're just looking at the graphs and seeing if we can make sense of it, and does anything in the graph connect with what we would expect astrologically. So I'm still working on this, and I'm working with several other researchers on other projects, and we're going to present the results of this research at the 2020 Vibrational Astrology Conference, March 27 to 29 in Gainesville, Florida. So you can come to the conference and you'll see what all these results are, and then eventually I'll make videos about it, we'll write articles about it, and it will become available, without having to go to the conference. But if you want to jump on this right now, you can come to these kind of conferences where the results are being presented as we get them. Now, I want to make a point here. I'm saying data visualization is a big deal. Like, this is a totally awesome, cool thing to do. Just to share with you that this is widely recognized in research, it's not just me saying this. I'm going to quote from this website, www.tordatascience.com, and I'll just read this quote. In the field of data science, data visualization is undoubtedly the top word today. No matter what data you want to analyze, doing data visualization seems to be a necessary step. But many people don't have a specific concept of data visualization, and they don't know how to implement it. Well, that's a pretty strong statement. Undoubtedly the top word today. So, and it's true, things like data visualization, and there are other tools, are the hot buzzer words. They're the hot buzzer topics now in understanding how things work, because we're in an information age. We're in any field of interest. People are collecting data. We have computers on our, we have laptop computers, we have servers, we have all this information. We can analyze it, we can graph it, and we can see what's going on. So this information age we live in is opening the door to knowledge discovery, is what it's often called. And we're doing it in astrology, and we're doing it now, and we're making the presentations, and we're making discoveries. Now, you're like me, and you're saying, David, tell me about the discoveries. Well, one thing at a time. In this video, I just want to emphasize the importance of data visualization, and that we can do the data visualization now, and we are making exciting discoveries. We're finding out things that are not true, or at least we're not able to see it. We cannot see anything going on between the suns and moons of husbands and wives in terms of normal aspects. There are things, I'll tell you this, there are things going on between the suns and moons of the husband and wives with midpoint structures. There are midpoint things going on, and there are other vibrational things going on between the suns and moons. This is just so exciting that we are entering this new age of understanding astrology, and that astrology is becoming part of the modern world in this way. Just a few more quotes. This data exploration is sometimes called data mining. You've all heard that term. So here's a book on data mining, right on page 1, where the author introduces it. He writes, data mining has to do with the discovery of useful, valid, unexpected, and understandable knowledge from data. Why is it unexpected? Because if it was expected, it means we kind of already know it, and we can just go into the data and look for it. If we're so sure that sun is trine moon between the husband and wife, we can just search for that. But the reason we do data mining is because we're open-minded. We're thinking, you know what? I think Sun is going to be trine Moon or sextile Moon, but maybe something else is going on. Let me explore and find out. And to do that, all we need is the data, we need some software to show it to us, and we need really good astrologers. That's the hardest part of all, is you have the astrologers go in, look at it, and see if you can make sense of it. I'll read you one more quote from another book. Again, on page 1, when they're introducing what data mining is, he defines that data mining is the art. Notice that. It's not just a science. It's an art. You have to be sensitive, intuitive, look at the data, be creative, see what you can come up with. It's the art, and there's a science to it. You're collecting data, you're getting the actual facts. Data mining is the art and science of intelligent data analysis. The aim is to discover meaningful insights and knowledge from data. Now this is the important part. Discoveries are often expressed as models. And we often describe data mining as the process of building models. So what we're doing with data visualization is we're building a model. We're building a set of ideas of what we think is going on in astrology that relates to marriage. The old-fashioned paradigm from the 1960s and 1970s and before then was that you were trying to, quote, prove something, validate that you know something. It was all about science, like you have a theory, confirm it. That's wonderful if you know what to look for. The fact is, today we often don't know what to look for, whether it's in genetics or sociology or psychology. We have some ideas, but rather than us having a clear assumption, let's explore the data to see what's there, and we build a model. So model is another word, like data visualization, that you will hear over and over and over again. So, for example, when they're making weather predictions, they'll say the European model for predicting hurricanes, various American models, and various European models, etc. Build models by analyzing the data and then see what model works. And what does the model do? It helps you understand what's going on and then predict. So you could, if we can see what is going on between husbands and wives, we could predict, we could anticipate who is likely to marry who, more likely than random. This is the exciting world that we are in. Data visualization, using all this wonderful information that's being developed. Like I said just in this past week, I've improved these research features because we are exploring this data. We want to find out what's going on between husbands and wives. Okay. And just one more quote. One of the first things we might want to know. So what do we want to know if we're going to study what's going on between husbands and wives, or what happens when you get into an accident, or what happens with anything in astrology? What makes somebody an astrologer or anything, or a musician or anything else? One of the first things we often want to know is how the target variable is distributed. By target variable, we just mean the variable we're interested in. So we're interested in the angular distance between the husband's sun and the wife's moon, or the husband's moon and the wife's sun, or between his Venus and her Mars, or whatever. We just want to see what we call it the distribution is. How does it look? That graph I just showed you. We just look at it and see if we can find something in it that makes sense. And this is how we make discoveries. We take what we call a content expert, an astrologer. You look at the data, you test your assumptions, you test, different ideas that you know about, explore it and see if you can come up with something. And you build the model and then gradually test the model. So here's what the screen looks like in the Sirius software. The graph is here. On the right side, you select the pairs that you want to study. And you see I've highlighted here the Gauquelin, G-A-U-Q is an abbreviation for Gauquelin, the Gauquelin husbands and wives, and the random control group. And then I made some other groups while I was debugging and developing the software. But the main groups, that we work with are the Alkaline husbands and wives, a random control group, and there's actually a few different ways to make the control groups, and you can test against several of them. Okay, I don't want to get too involved in the nuts and bolts of this in this first video on data visualization and compatibility. I want you to appreciate the overall concept that we can select a group, we can compare it to the randomized group, as we call it, control group. We can look at the angular distances. Let me show you it in the program itself. So here is the Sirius software, and I'll go over here to the research, and I'll go to pairs. Look at all of the kinds of research you can do. I'll go to pairs, and pairs exploratory research of synastry angles. Well, now I just added more than synastry angles. What I've added is these new abilities to search harmonic aspects and midpoint structures. When I added the feature for midpoint structures, and I looked at the sun-moon things going on, wow, it was so exciting, because after looking at the angular distances and not seeing anything and getting disappointed, I went to the midpoints and things are popping out. Now, is this proof, as people like to say, that astrology works? We're not interested in proof. We're interested in building models that are compelling, that appear to work, and we test them. We build models, we test models. It's all about building models. This is what's called evidence-based. It's an evidence-based astrology. You've heard of evidence-based medicine. It means look at the data, apply it in your consultations, and see if it's better than what you're doing now. You don't have to be certain that you're correct. You're just building a better model, a model that has more promise, more hope, more likelihood that it actually works. And we've learned from this research that looking at the distance between the husband's sun and the wife's moon is not really telling us much, but looking at some other things is showing up. It's very exciting. Then you can apply that to your consultations and see if it helps and collect more data. And anyway, you get the idea. There's no end to this. We are in a new world. So what I'll do here is I will click on the husband and wife data. These are the actual husbands and wives, not the control group. And I've got sun and moon. And let's look at it the other way around. Husband's moon to the wife's sun. So the first chart is the husband, the second chart is the wife in this husband and wife pairing. That's just the way we set it up. And then I just click on this recalculate button, and it does it. And it does about 1,000 couples per second. So for 20,000 couples, it might take 15 or 20 seconds. It's already done. And there it is. This is moon to sun, the other way around. And there it is. And we see some peaks, and we can do it for the control groups and see what they look like. And if we see the control group is fairly flat all the way across or has a clear pattern, and the actual people, the actual husband and wives are very different, then it looks like we found something. And if it matches reasonable astrological theory, we're even more sure of it. And that's the big breakthroughs that we're making. And I'm finalizing this over the next few weeks. In late March 25 to 27, I will present this research. Other astrologers are presenting research on what they've discovered with people with bipolar disorder. What does a quincunx aspect actually mean? What does the North Node really do? So many things we can explore with data visualization and other kinds of research tools that we now have available. So I wanted to show you the importance of data visualization, that it's emphasized throughout the literature as very important, how we're using it. Let me show you one more thing here. This is degrees per point. I can smooth this graph by combining 2. See, it gets smoother, or 3. It's taking a span of 3 degrees and bunching them together, or 5 degrees. And now it becomes clear that the angular distance of the husband's moon to the wife's sun is tending to be higher, around 145 degrees. Now, maybe that's just a random fluctuation, but my point is that you can smooth the graph. Now I'm getting more detailed, and this is the original graph every degree. Here's one at every 30 degrees. And then that shows a very clear pattern that the data is actually going down, 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 and then all the way up. At 10 degrees, that pattern still looks like it's there. This is data visualization. You're visualizing it at different levels of detail and seeing if there are overall trends of what's happening. You can think of it as like orbs. What is the orb of that trine? Is it gradually going up? What is happening? And as an astrologer, and as somebody who gets used to working with data visualization and comparing the actual group to the randomized group, or we call control group, and you get familiar with working with this, you start to make very strong models, very strong case that a model actually works. So it's very, very exciting that all of this is happening, and evidence-based astrology is moving forward rapidly. And I think in the future we're going to see this in every kind of astrology, whether somebody does Hellenistic or medieval or modern psychological or Vedic. We can explore the data from different viewpoints and see what's going on. It's a lot of work. You do have to be really nerdy and be patient and work through it. It's not for everybody to dig in at this level. But what can happen is the practitioners, people seeing clients who maybe don't have all the patience to do this, can understand the importance of it. And then those people that like to sit there and going through the stuff and work together and build, and that's what we're doing. So I see this spreading everywhere. So let me give some key points here, concluding points. I'm basically done. I just want to summarize 9 points. Number 1, data visualization is important. It helps us understand how astrology works. I mean, how cool is that? And we can use it for writing articles and books and for lectures. And more, I think we're going to see people combining together, teams of 2 people, sometimes 3, usually small groups, very often just 2 people working together, one person working more on the writing and the explanation, the other person, and maybe with their clients, the other person helping see how it appears in a data collection and if it supports the theory. So data visualization is important. It works. And it's not just for researchers. It's for people writing books and articles and giving lectures. Number 2, you can use data visualization for natal charts, compatibility, forecasting, etc. I'm just summarizing some points. Number 3, statistical analysis that we hear so much about with t-tests and other kinds of tests and statistical significance. That comes after a lot of data exploration with things like data visualization. You must do a lot of data visualization or other kinds of exploratory research so that you have a better ability to come up with an idea that works and you get a better understanding. I mean, your understanding just gets much better. So there still is statistical analysis, but it's a last step, and sometimes in a lot of fields you never even get to it. You're just getting enough information, or as much as you can get, from the exploration and pattern analysis. But it is a gold standard. If you can, really be really sure of a specific relationship, then you can do that statistical test. Number 4, data visualization requires good astrologers with good intuition. That's essential. Number 5, the data and the software tools are available now. Okay, we're making them less expensive. There's one program that's free. The data is online for free. There's some that's more expensive, you have to purchase, but it's becoming less expensive, it's becoming more powerful, and just getting better every day. Number 6, Breakthroughs are being made. They're being made. We've been making them for a few years now in what we call these evidence-based methods. And I think the news is spreading gradually that this is happening, and I think it's going to spread into every area of astrology. Number 7, we employ these methods extensively in what we call vibrational astrology. That's the system that I use, and I'm sure it's going to spread into every other kind of astrological system. And I mentioned the Vibrational Astrology Conference. It's every year, currently in Gainesville, Florida. In the year 2020, it's March 27 to 29, and also at a larger conference for a larger, well-established for many decades, major organization, the International Society for Astrological Research. Their conference in the year 2020 is in September. On the opening day of the conference, Thursday, September 10, in Westminster, Colorado, which is a little bit outside Denver, heading towards Boulder. So you fly into the Denver airport, take the shuttle to the hotel. On the opening day, Thursday, September 10th, the opening's at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That morning, from 9 to 11:30, I'm going to give a lecture on evidence-based astrology. And as I have here, be a part of the revolution. I really think we're looking at a revolution in astrology, that science is moving towards astrology, and astrology is incorporating this data analysis, we can call it, and there's no longer this big conflict between being cerebral and analytical and number oriented and being intuitive and mystical and so on. They're all one, and this is what's coming together for us in the new information age. So let me just finish by showing you these websites real quickly. Here's the Cosmic Patterns software website, astrosoftware.com, and if you go to conference, menu item up here, and then here's the information about the conference, the speakers, the schedule, information about the hotel, and registering for it. And here is the ESAR conference. You can go to esarastrology.org, click on the link, and it takes you to esar2020.org, a website specifically just for this conference. And this is a huge conference. As you can see here, 130 lectures, 100 speakers, and I mentioned the main conference opening is on Thursday, September 10th. There's pre-conference workshops for several days before and post-conference workshops. And the speakers, registration. If we look at the schedule, I'll just show you this last thing, and you scroll down through the schedule. Here's the pre-conference on Wednesday, and here we are on September 10th, the Thursday of the opening. And there's the evidence-based astrology lecture at 9 to 11:30 in the morning, and then the opening at 1 p.m. And that evidence-based astrology lecture that I'm giving from 9 to 11:30 that Thursday morning, it's included if you register for the full conference, so it's not an extra charge. So if you get there early before the opening at 1 o'clock, you can come. We've got a room reserved that's going to fit 200 people. I'm hoping we pack the room. It's going to be exciting. And if you really want to step into the future of astrology and how things can be done in these exciting ways, there's the Vibrational Astrology Conference, March 27 to 29, 2020. And as you know, I've made over 300 free, YouTube videos. There are books, there are online classes, so many things happening. But evidence-based astrology is catching fire. And at the ESAR conference, we're going to really light that fire for evidence-based astrology. It's very exciting. It doesn't require statistics. It doesn't require taking all of the beauty and elegance and mystery and magic of astrology and killing the soul of it and turning it into boring, lifeless numbers. That's not what it is. The astrology becomes more alive and more exciting as we find out the beauty of how astrology actually works and it really does work. That's my viewpoint. This is not just divination. We are showing that it works and discovering how it works. Okay, well, enough of the sermon part of that. Main thing I wanted to do here was just to let you know about data visualization. Thank you very much for listening, my friends. God bless. Namaste.